suddenly a college degree isn't worth as much because, and this is a big problem with capitalism again, your wages have absolutely nothing to do with your skills and have nothing to do with the value that you bring to a company. Yeah. Your wages are specifically a function of supply and demand, which is why the Democrats' plan to, I don't know, teach everybody coding is not going to work. If you had as many people who knew coding as are qualified to work, at McDonald's, for instance, well, coders would get paid the amount that people who currently get paid at McDonald's are, which is minimum wage.
That's why I am mad at Howard Schultz, right? Mm-hmm. This guy is running for president, and he might as well just come out and say it. He would rather have Trump than Bernie. And he's basically threatening, if they nominate Bernie, I'll run, make it a three-way race, and Trump will win again. That's what he's saying. I mean, I saw him on CNN yesterday, and you look at him, I mean, you want to talk about somebody who doesn't have any compassion, who just, is just your ruthless penny-pinching boss. You know what I mean? Howard Schultz, Google the term clopening.
Yeah.
Clopening. Clopening. Closing and opening. That's what he used to do to his employees. Where he'd make the schedule, so, the Starbucks closes for 3 or 4 hours, right? The closing.
Oh, God.
Right, and they'd have to work 2 6 8-hour shifts back-to-back with not enough time to sleep, barely enough time to even get home, right? And that they had a computer algorithm to determine when people's hours were. Different every week, and sometimes the computer would come up and you'd work a clopening, where you'd have a big 4-hour break that you don't get paid for between closing and opening the store. That's demented. And the New York Times even has run articles about, Starbucks employees tend to use stimulants of some kind, not just Starbucks coffee, but harder stuff in order to work the schedules this man has. And he brags, oh, look, I give them financial help to go to college. Or oh, come on. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, this is a crooked, ruthless boss. You know what I mean? And his whole message is Bernie Sanders is too far left. We can't have social democracy. So if the Democrats nominate somebody who's too far left for centrist guys like me, I'll rig it so Trump wins again. That's what he's saying, basically.
I mean, Michael Bloomberg said the same thing in 2016. If it looked like Bernie was going to beat Hillary, he was going to enter the race and act as a spoiler. Mm-hmm. He didn't say explicitly, I'll get Trump into power, because I think people would have beheaded him at that point. But, these sort of imperious billionaires, they always do this. And I think that if nothing else, that's a sign that Bernie actually has something behind him. Mm-hmm. I've got issues with Bernie Sanders. I'd vote for him, definitely. I think he's the best one in the out of everybody that we have. But a lot of people are like, oh man, no, Bernie's exactly like everybody else. If Bernie was like everybody else, they really would not fight him as hard as they do.
And again, it's not about Bernie. It's about what he represents, which is that for years, I remember it, even when I was first getting political, right, that there was always a left-wing Democrat, like Dennis Kucinich or somebody. They would participate in the race, and they'd be in the debate, and they'd say, I want to open a Department of Peace, and it was, oh, you're so cute, and then they would lose, and they would tell everybody, vote for the mainstream, defeat, and they'd get a convention speech or something, and that was it. And then 2016, I was in the halls of that convention, and I saw something, what everyone has always said. And it's funny, because Green Party people and all that swore this would never happen. That's why you needed to just leave the Democratic Party. It happened. And Bernie was trying to stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, he told his supporters, just stop, just vote for Hillary. They were not going to do it. They were sick of this. And it was so blatantly rigged. I mean,
Donna Brazile came out later on and confirmed that it was rigged. Yeah. And, if we do have any, Hillbots watching, seriously, it was rigged. It was not illegally rigged the way that Trump implied. But Hillary controlled the DNC's finances. She provided the money for them to operate. You cannot control the finances of the organization charged with picking you, or when you're the one running for president. If you do that, that is such a huge conflict of interest that it invalidates your own electoral victory. And the fact that Bernie did as well as he did was just mind-blowing. I was actually, for a while, I was kind of hoping he might pull a de Blasio. Because remember when Bill de Blasio first came out, he had 2% or something, and it just, boom, exploded, and, now he's disappointing me. But, who was it that he was running against? Christine Quinn in New York?
De Blasio? Yeah. He got arrested. I mean, I remember de Blasio's campaign. When he got arrested when they were closing a hospital, he made a point of getting arrested in a civil disobedience. And
props. And
in a way, the right-wing hysteria that he was a communist and all that helped him, because he's not that radical at the end of the day, but it's like the people that want him to be, I think was the secret. And I will say, this shows how I'm a little bit out of touch. On some level, I admit I'm a little bit out of touch, because I saw that ad with his son, And I went, do you remember the ad?
No, I didn't.
Well,
I
his
didn't see this
son,
ad.
Young African American, has an afro. He's like, Bill de Blasio, blah, blah, blah. I would still vote for him even if he wasn't my dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it shows them, like, walking and holding hands. And I thought, that is, like, blatant racial tokenization. He's basically made an ad announcing to the world, I have a son who's black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, this guy's going to get killed. They are going to make fun of him for years. This is hokey. This is stupid. But everyone loved the ad.
Yeah.
People cried when they saw the ad. They loved it. So that shows that on some level, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well,
whatever.
I mean, it was genuinely his son. And I can
you're
tell
right.
you as, like, a dad myself, I would be touched if my son, was all like, I want my dad to be mayor.
Sure.
I'd probably be, I'd either be terrible or I'd be amazing. But it's really interesting with Bernie, and I thought that this was the genius of Bernie, because Bernie, like, has run for years on being a socialist.
Yeah.
And I don't actually think Bernie is a socialist. Like, he may, like, I know he's associated with the DSA. He was very supportive of the Sandinistas. There's a great picture of him, like, drinking with some Soviets or something in the 80s.
Well, that's because, during the 80s, there was a big effort to build relations between there was a whole, like, exchange. They even did the Muppets did a TV special.
So that we don't all kill each other.
Yeah, that wasn't a communist thing at all. But, but Burlington, had a Soviet sister city, and so did, like, Cleveland and all of them. And that was part of the 80s. Liberals in the 80s were doing that a lot.
Yeah.
It was just kind of part of the anti-nuclear, let's all get along and end the Cold War. But
part of the reason I got interested in socialism and anarchism in particular, and eventually became a communist. I started out as an anarcho-syndicalist and then kind of lost faith in unions. But, like, one of the reasons I looked at it was Obama's a communist. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I know Obama's not a communist. And so I looked up communism and I read about it and learned about it. And I'm like, okay, this is why Obama's not, this is why Obama's not, this is why Obama's not. But they just kept repeating it. And they do it for every single candidate that's to the right of, like, Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
To the left of Attila the Hun. And, like, what Bernie did was he stole their thunder there. They're like, oh, he'll get taken apart because he's a communist. No, he won't. They've used that already.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think that Bernie, now he's blatantly telling people he does not advocate public control of the means of production, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in that, right? He believes, socialism, as he said on the debate stage with Hillary Clinton, his vision of democratic socialism is not contrary to capitalism.
Yeah.
He
Social democracy.
Yeah, he believes in a bigger welfare state.
Yeah.
Which
is better than what we have now.
Yeah.
It's way better than neoliberal.
But if you look at it the way he developed, right, it was, I think it was 1980 when he first got elected.
Something like that.
It was Mayor of Burlington at that point. And if you look at the way he developed politically, if you look at that, it was, in the 70s, you had the rise of, you had the new communist movement throughout the 70s, right? Coming out of the 60s, you had all kinds of people that were involved in the, the various communist groups and the Trotskyites and all of that. And they spent like a decade trying to build the groups, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was the first big economic downturn since the end of the Second World War in 1978. And there was a feeling that now the working class is going to wake up, right? All these socialists and communists have been working in factories for years, and a lot of them had multiple degrees and were selling newspapers to their factory workers, the co-workers at their factory. They didn't want to hear it, and they thought, now the economic downturn has come. Now will be the moment.
Yeah.
And the economy went down, and things got worse. And largely, the majority of the American working class became more conservative.
Because, again, stress pushes people to the right.
If you can remember the 50s when it was good, your response is going to be, let's go back to when it was good before. Now let's try something completely new. Communism was the enemy, etc. Right?
Yeah. So
then, coming out of that, you had at that point, you had, for a while you had some of the communist groups just going crazy, right? The Revolutionary Communist Party, they had this, this death to Deng Xiaoping rally when Deng Xiaoping was meeting Jimmy Carter, and like 200 of their members were arrested, and it was and then the Communist Workers' Party very famously challenged the Ku Klux Klan to a fight.
Oh boy!
And and that resulted in the Greensboro massacre.
Yeah. Fun fact about the Ku Klux Klan: the second Klan was originally a MLM. It was and I mean a multi-level marketing scheme.
Oh yeah, people have talked about that. Yeah, and so regardless, around this period, the things were going more to the right, and then China was becoming more and more conservative, and really didn't. A lot of these people had been Maoists. And China really didn't want any international communist allies. That wouldn't help them get foreign investors to come in, to have communist parties around the world taking guidance and direction from them. And so at that point, DSA kind of emerged with people that had been communists, had spent a decade, and DSA was it was Michael Harrington, and In These Times magazine, and he was saying to a lot of these people who had been communists, had gone through the 60s and the 70s, this whole Soviet communist Cold War thing is not really going to work, and let's do something different. Let's do something that's a little more, in the
palatable.
Yeah, a little more social democratic. And Bernie Sanders comes out of that. And I actually, it's funny because Vermont, Burlington, a lot of New York hippies moved to Vermont during this period, right? Because they've been here and all of that, and then they just moved upstate.
Yeah.
And so, that's really Vermont. It's a very, very liberal place. And it looks like rural farm country.
Oh, yeah, rolling hills. I hiked through it when I was doing the Appalachian Trail. Lived with a Doomsday Cult.
Yeah, but the schools all have names like, I remember there was a high school that had the name of School of Ecological Sustainability or something. You know what I mean? And it's it's very, very hippie, you know what I mean? And it's and a lot of these, and the October League, former members of the October League, I know were part of his campaign originally, former members of this Maoist communist group, and the Communist Party USA and all these people, and he kind of was the guy who got kind of a lot of these former 60s radicals to kind of rally around him as let's do this in a more palatable way. But, I think for most of the 80s, he was still saying he wanted the economy run by the people. I think it's more recently that he's really kind of, at this point...
he's going for mainstream appeal.
Yeah.
I really think worker ownership is where we're going, and it's going to be where we have to go.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes when you're out on the fringes, you don't realize what it would take to put your ideas into place, and I really think that it makes sense to me what Bernie is doing. I don't personally agree with it, but also I'm not running for president.
Sure.
Though, honestly, I used to think I was completely disqualified for running for president because of all the stuff in my plays and then Trump, and I'm like, okay, all bets are off.
There you go.